accountability, I want to thank the organizers of the People's Tribunal on the murder of journalists for convening these hearings and continuing to shed light on the assassination of famed journalist Lasantha Wickrematunge. Lasantha's murder on January 8, 2009 had a profound, chilling effect on the press in Sri Lanka and shocked the world. Yet despite 13 years of hard-fought effort by his family and the international community calling for justice, not a single person has been held to account. I have had the honor of representing Lasantha's daughter, Ahimsa Wickrematunge, in some of her efforts to find justice for her father's murder. Like her father, she has gone through great lengths and exhibited such courage in pursuing the truth. It is unfathomable that Lasantha's family must continue to fight for justice in this way. And yet, despite the years of effort undermined by political interference and cover-ups in the investigation, the family has yet to give up hope that justice is still possible and necessary for the future of Sri Lanka. Ahimsa was unable to join us today and has asked that I read out this statement welcoming the tribunal's proceedings on her behalf. As I speak to you today, remarkable and truly historic events are taking place in Sri Lanka. After years of suffering under the tyranny of Rajapaksa misrule and despotism, the people have risen in one strident voice and are demanding that these abusive leaders exit from government. It was under the presidency of Mahinda Rajapaksa that my father, Lasantha Wickrematunge, was assassinated in cold blood on the streets of Colombo on the 8th of January 2009. At the time, the current president, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, served as defense secretary in his brother Mahinda's government. It was a dark and repressive era in the history of Sri Lanka, and the rulers assumed that the murder of this trailblazing journalist would be but a small distraction in the jubilant celebrations of a war victory. They could not have been more wrong. My father's assassination caused outrage, not only in Sri Lanka, but across the world. His posthumous editorial titled, "And Then They Came for Me," in which he foretold his death, became an often quoted example of journalistic courage and exceptionalism, and a beacon of hope and inspiration for all those who stood for fairness, justice, accountability, and a free and robust press. Even though a murder investigation was initiated in Sri Lanka soon after his assassination, nothing came of it. When the government changed in 2015, both Sri Lanka and our family finally hoped that justice would finally be done and that Lasantha Wickrematunge's killers would finally be held to account. But it was not to be. Members of the new government were more interested in covering for the killers than seeking to punish the perpetrators of this crime. For so many years, courts and governments have slammed the door on families of murdered journalists who seek nothing more than to bring those who killed their loved ones to justice. Now, the People's Tribunal on Murdered Journalists in The Hague have taken up the case of my father, together with two other slain journalists from Syria and Mexico, Nabil Shabarji and Miguel Angel Lopez Velasco. My family and I express our deep gratitude to Free Press Unlimited, the Committee to Protect Journalists, and Reporters Without Borders, who collaborated to bring our family the closest we have ever come to receiving any form of closure. I am also grateful to human rights lawyer Almudena Bernabeu, all the witnesses who have come forward, and everyone who has contributed in no small measure to see that this tribunal is a success. It is heartening that 13 long years after my father's assassination, the People's Tribunal is providing families like mine something resembling a day in court. My thoughts and prayers are with the families of murdered Sri Lankan journalists Pragit Eknaligoda, Dharmaratnam Sivaram, Milvaganam Nimalarajan, as well as with journalist Keith Neuer, who was subject to brutal torture, and many others who paid a high price for speaking truth to power. Perhaps when the tribunal lays out the full brutality of these murders, the bell will finally toll for those who killed journalists like my father, those who might have imagined they would never face the consequences of their barbarity. My father's assassination, just like the killings of all other journalists, was not only a heinous crime that denied his family of a wonderful father, but also robbed the people of Sri Lanka their right to the truth. In that last editorial, he wrote, "I hope my assassination will not be seen as a defeat of freedom, but an inspiration for those who survive. I hope it will galvanize forces that will usher in a new era of human liberty in our beloved motherland." These words are indeed coming true before our eyes today as the people of Sri Lanka rise in unity against years of corruption, misrule, state-sanctioned murder, and impunity. We can dare hope that my father's vision of transparency, impartiality, tolerance, and liberty is within reach. Thank you.
And compelling evidence consisting of witness testimony, including that of expert witnesses and those with personal experience, very substantial written documentations from individuals and organizations. The tribunal has unanimously made the following decision. Throughout their acts and omissions, including the lack of investigations, the lack of reparation of the victims, and the full impunity, the states of Mexico, Sri Lanka, and Syria are guilty of all the human rights violations brought against them in the indictment. The tribunal is also of the opinion that the three states have violated a number of other conventions, treaties, and other international, regional, and national legal instruments to which they have themselves committed to uphold. A detailed consideration of this was not in the mandate of this tribunal, but we strongly recommend that such endeavor be pursued. I pass the floor